Good morning. It's Thursday, November 13th, 2014. This is Tech Talk Today, episode freaking 91. My name is Chris, and I'm just in studio all by myself, so I have a support group of highly opinionated internet experts in our Mumble Room. Time-appropriate greetings, Mumble Room.
Hello.
Hey,
Hey,
guys.
my name is Eric, and I run Linux.
I like
We're
it.
here for you.
We are your support group, Eric, and you are amongst friends. All right, guys. So this has been a nuts week. It really has. And I also want to mention there's a lot going on that we're going to cover in some of our other shows. So like some of the .NET stuff will be happening and landing in LAS. We continue the net neutrality discussion in last night's Unfilter. And there's a bunch of security headlines that broke this week that we'll be talking about in TechSnap. So a broad range of topics this week that we're covering in all of the shows. And today, in Tech Talk Today, I wanted to talk about a big VR update. This is something that has become sort of more important to me ever since I got the Oculus SDK, the DK2. This is something that I have literally done a 180 on. Because I got burned by Virtual Boy and things like that. And once I got the DK2 and spent a little time in it and honestly came away with what felt like, you know, when you experience a new technology and you're like, this is going to change everything. It felt like that. It felt like that when it really resonates. Like, this is a big deal. So I'm really curious to see what the market's going to do to make it a reality. And Samsung, surprisingly, is one of the companies at the forefront. Well, they've been having a big show, and they've been talking about their VR stuff. And to go along with the VR headset that we've talked about before, which I have an update on in just a moment, they announced a 3D capturing camera. It's Project Beyond, they call it. It's a sneak preview of a camera which has 3D capturing, 360 degrees, which is designed to pair up with the VR headset. So you could do like remote panning and turning in a VR headset, and you could have like this camera in another place, another building, and it could be the remote eyes for you. It's amazing. It's a new kind of camera that gives you an immersive experience. The camera itself, supposedly, now this is no real details on this from Samsung other than what they shared at the event, but supposedly it has 16 full HD cameras, so that means 1080p, in this housing. 16 cameras to give you a 360-degree panoramic view. It captures everything in 3D all the time, collecting a gigapixel of 3D data every second. They say they'll use high-speed connectivity, adaptive stitching, ultra-wide-angle optics, and stereoscopic depth. But it's all just a concept, but they did demonstrate a working device at the show today. Wouldn't that be awesome to pair up with like a VR headset?
Oh, yeah.
I'm on VR overload right now. This is amazing.
Yeah.
I know, right?
But it looks kind of cross-eyed. How does that work?
Say again?
It looks a bit cross-eyed.
Oh.
The cameras there.
Yeah, well, I guess that's for the 3D imaging, I suppose. You're right. It does look a little cross-eyed. That's funny. I didn't really notice that. Also has a camera on the top, too.
It actually makes sense, though, because you do need to have that perspective to do the 3D imaging correctly.
So I want to... Here's a little of the video, and this is not like an awesome video, and there's not really... But it gives you an idea of what maybe it would be like. So they go out to the beach. They bring the camera in a standard like Pelican camera case. They set it up at the beach. Now, how are they getting ultra speed connectivity to deliver the amount of data this thing would require? Good question. We don't know that.
LTE.
Yeah, I guess. But it'd be a few LTE if it's a gigapixel a second. So then another guy puts on the VR headset, and now he's seeing what they have at the beach. It's pretty neat, right? And they kind of give you an idea what it would be. You could essentially, you could be a company that buys 4 or 5 of these and puts them in famous places around the world, and then people could come to you could have multiple offices all over the country where people could go to and take a quick virtual tour for $50.
And then you try to walk and notice that nothing's moving around you.
Well, so if you're watching the video version, we also have this video linked in the Engadget article in the show notes. They're showing you, I think they're about to do the bust apart. Yeah, there you go. So that's the, look at that. That's the internals of that thing. There's the 16 HD cameras with the image sensor controllers, cooling system, all of that. It looks like a pretty sophisticated feat of engineering, if we ever see it come to market.
Yeah,
and
if.
it would have to be super pricey. All right, so while we're on the topic of VR and getting your hands on it, so Samsung is launching a Gear VR Innovator Edition, so sort of like a developer beta, for $199 next month. You'll be able to buy the Samsung anybody. It's going to be available to the general public, the Innovator Edition of the Gear VR. Now, I guess when I say $199, there is kind of a big caveat with that. So it's $199 for the headset. All right, that's not too bad. That's probably cheaper than what the Rift is going to be at. You will also have to spend a little more if you want like a controller to be able to, like a wireless controller that works with it. So if you get the headset and a wireless controller, it's probably Bluetooth, $250. Still not too bad. However, it also requires that you install a Note 4. So you need a Note 4 on top of all of that, unsubsidized. That'd be, because you probably don't, unless you already have a Note 4, you're probably not going to buy a Note 4 and have a data plan with a contract. So you probably have to buy it unsubsidized. That'd be $700. This is where it starts to fall apart. So this is really good if you have a Note, right? If you don't have a Note 4, this is kind of what's too bad is like Samsung's coming at it with all this really interesting tech and obviously a lot of energy and engineering behind it. And then they essentially torpedo the product like this by putting, it's a $199 price tag if you don't include the $700 smartphone that you need for it.
It's almost like an artificial lock-in.
Yeah, right. It's an accessory.
Yeah.
It seems like one of those kind of old Sega CDs where you need to have the Sega Genesis before you even can buy the CD.
Mm-hmm. If you could put like any 5-inch or larger phone in there, that'd be a little different, right? But you could see why they don't. Like it has a special connector when it connects to in there for the Note 4, where it'll recognize and it'll put the Note 4 in VR mode. Like they're doing, it's not just like the screen. It's like a whole level of integration that they're able to offer, and that's why they have to make it one of their phones. Man, I want this though.
I wonder if Google will do something and then we just have to use cardboard.
Maybe. So here's the advantage to it being mobile. You don't get as great of games because they're not going to be as high-end as a PC game because they're mobile games, but you also don't have any of the problems I've had. You don't have to worry about if your operating system supports it, if you have HDMI and USB power or 3 USB ports available or whatever. It's very streamlined. So I hope it goes somewhere, but at this setup, it's definitely only for developers. And I think when it's ready for consumers, hopefully we'll see it around $250 with a screen, but it might be pie in the sky. Although, before we gotta acknowledge, if anybody's in a position to pull this off, it's Samsung, because they make a lot of these parts. They make these screens, they make the processors, they make the cameras, right? So if anybody can assemble this at a pretty reasonable cost, I would think it would be Samsung. So maybe we'll see something soon. Something we've all kind of suspected, definitely the technical crowd in the audience, but Pew Research has done a pretty comprehensive study, and they've shown that 91% of adults in the U.S. say consumers have lost control over how their personal info is collected and used by companies. 91%. 43% of adults have heard a lot about the government collecting information about telephone calls, emails, and other online activities as part of anti-terrorism activities, and 44% of U.S. adults have heard just a little. 5% of adults in the panel said that they've heard nothing at all about the spying programs. Only 5%. That's pretty good. But the greater concern, according to the survey, was about commercial companies. They were more concerned that the government wasn't doing enough to regulate commercial companies, and that the commercial companies had too much free will access to our personal information. I'm not surprised by any of this more than what I guess the part of this Pew Research study that surprises me is that such a high population is aware of the privacy issues. And that, to me, could long-term be devastating to companies like Google and Facebook.
Was this before or after the AT&T super cookie thing was revealed?
Yeah, this study's been going on for months, so I would assume after. But yeah, that's a great question. And Verizon too, by the way. Also, I don't know if you heard, but Verizon was also has acknowledged doing something similar.
Is that where Byteway works?
Yeah.
It brings up a point that I'm confused about. All right, if a company builds its presence on the internet, what kind of responsibility does it have to secure itself versus the government? For instance, if a company built a brick and mortar building in downtown Ohio, Dayton, Ohio, and somebody came and was shooting guns or a tank at it, then the government would have some responsibility to protect it. Is there an equivalent on the internet? Because there's no building or anything really.
It depends on where the data is stored. It's like that where the government was trying to get hold of Microsoft because of the emails stored in Ireland. So it's wherever the data is stored is the laws that apply there.
So the line in the U.S. today seems to be if it is a part of a broader threat, quote unquote, a cyber threat, a state actor, something like that, malware that's affecting multiple industries, or if anything at all to do with the banks, like if they get a few too many pings, then it's a federal issue. Those kinds of things seem to be where all of a sudden, like, the government steps in. But honestly, I mean, in Tech Dog, I know you know this as somebody who works in IT. At the end of the day, the onus is always on the company, regardless, because they're the ones that have to implement the system, set the password, secure, have good procedures and policies in place. Have good data retention policies in place. It doesn't matter what the government tells them to do. At the end of the day, functionally, it's on the company.
Well, can't they just declare it a cyber attack, and now the military's cyber war section takes care of it for them for free?
Yeah, I think, well, I don't know about free, but I think you're seeing companies like Target and P.F. Chang's and Michael's that are rolling over and crying cyber attack, and then the government swoops in and they become the victim and not the buffoon who mismanaged their customer records. Like in the case of Target, right? Target, one of the greatest credit card breaches ever, because they had a VPN open back to their HVAC vendor, so that way they could remotely administer their HVAC system. And the attackers got into Target's network that way. Then which was bad design, A, that's on Target. Then once they were on Target's network, it wasn't properly isolated, B, that's on Target. And then C, they were running unpatched Windows XP at the endpoint sales, so the malware was able to install itself in XP using known flaws and read the memory as the credit cards were going through the RAM of the payment processors. Now that's a cyber attack, but that's also malpractice, right? That's malpractice on the part of Target. And I don't care if China's behind it, I don't care if Russia's behind it, or some kid in downtown Seattle's behind it. That's malpractice on the part of Target, and if I was a sysadmin at that place, I think I should have been fired for that.
So what you're saying is three strikes and you're incompetent.
This is something that I think America is lagging behind other countries. Like, if that was a company in the UK, they would be so up in front of the courts under the Data Protection Act. There would be massive fines, and there have been for companies in the UK that have done very similar things.
See, I think the core issue is the political climate is such in the U.S. that they want to embrace these cyber events and make the most out of them, because there's a lot of parties that are interested in pushing that forward. And so instead of taking the proper action and penalizing these companies appropriately, instead of these teeny, meeny, itsy bitsy fines, and then they have to give away 1 free year of credit checking, which then most of those people just automatically get signed up for getting billed the next year, and then they probably get a kickback from that. Just a guess. And I look at this and I think to myself, no, the political climate is such that they are encouraging this victimization. They are encouraging this and not encouraging the correct types of responsibility. Because let's be honest, the technology has not just been out there for years to prevent this, but it's well established now. And yeah, from time to time it needs updates and maintenance and things like that, like when things like Heartbleed happen. But there's no excuse for what's happened. Like in the case of P.F. Chang's, right, which is a restaurant, one of the restaurants here that I've gone to, was one of the restaurants that was attacked. The malware that attacked P.F. Chang's was a derivative of the malware that attacked Target. In other words, even though one of the largest retailers in the United States was breached in a super embarrassing credit card breach, several other companies like Wendy's, Michael's, P.F. Chang's, and others were all hit by almost the same exact thing. So they sat there on their asses and did nothing to protect themselves after they watched Target. And they had months to protect their networks and shore up their firewall and their defenses, and they did nothing. And then now they're the victim.
That's probably because they're thinking, oh, that's not going to happen to me.
I guess, yeah, right. I mean, everybody
bet it
thinks
was
that.
because
That's
they're.
the wrong thinking, though.
That's probably what they're thinking.
I don't even think they're thinking that. I think they're doing the whole risk management assessment. So the amount of money it would take them to actually fix their stuff,
right.
They don't care enough to do it because they can just go in the back end and say, well, this is how much it'll go away.
Yeah, that's been my experience.
Well, it doesn't really matter. This is definitely a situation where you can blame the victim, because the victim in this case is not doing, as our great Alan Jude says, patching their S.
Well, but in some ways,
yeah.
the consumer becomes the victim, because what the end result is once again, another credit card number of mine has been stolen, and I've been yet once again, as a sorry about that, offered a year of free credit card monitoring from Experian, which I do not want.
Which does nothing.
Right.
That is useful as a wet paper bag.
Yep.
So it's pretty frustrating because so when I hear about this stuff, like in one part I'm pretty optimistic because holy crap, man, 91% of Americans that were surveyed by Pew Research are aware of the fact that there's way too much of our own private information being collected by these companies. That's a huge breakthrough. 88% of adults agree or strongly agree that it would be very difficult to remove inaccurate information about them online, and 80% of those who use social networking sites say they are concerned about third parties like advertisers or businesses accessing the data they share on these sites and using it to market at them, and 70% of social networking site users say they are at least somewhat concerned about the government accessing some of the information they share on social networking sites without their knowledge. But 91% agree or strongly agree that consumers have lost control over how their personal information is collected and used by all companies. Amen.
So this is a situation then where you could blame the company for giving out consumer information, basically, is what it comes down to. Because if they're not patching their stuff, then they need to do it.
The details of the survey are in the overall paper from Pew.
Yeah, I think it's two things. It's one where they're giving it away accidentally, and then there's other ones where they're giving it away deliberately, and there's too much of the deliberate.
Yeah.
My favorite is where the people that sell the information get broken into and people steal it, and they come on the news and say, your information was stolen today, and then you do some research on the company and find out, well, they sell it. It's just somebody went in and stole it and didn't pay for it.
Yeah. A lot of good charts too in this paper too, so it'll be linked to the show notes. You guys can check it out. I guess I find it to be a positive note though that at least consumers are aware of it, and that eventually I believe may lead to consumer demand, which may lead to one of these services trying to market to that demand by being the private, secure, doesn't track you thing. Like you're seeing that start to happen in the mobile industry now. That people are trying to make hay. It could start to become a feature for some of these companies, so it might work out. It's kind of I'm a little optimistic about it after reading that research. So you never know.
I'm afraid there's too much money involved. I don't see it happening.
Yeah, we'll see.
I can be devil's advocate about it. I'm kind of a skeptic about it because I think that it doesn't matter how many people know. It matters how many of them actually care. Because there's going to be people who will fully aware of this and just kind of just throw their hands up like, well, we can't do anything about it.
Maybe, man, maybe. I'm trying to remember. There's a book I read, and I cannot remember it. But the guy in the book predicts that in another generation, we'll be getting paid for our information. Like it'll start to become our personal information, because it's so valuable to these companies. We'll start to look at it as an asset that we have control over, and that we sort of sell off to these companies and make something in exchange for it more directly. This book, that sounds kind of pie in the sky, but this book, I'll try to find the name. I cannot remember. If you know in the audience and want to leave a comment, and then I could let people know in the next episode if I think of it. What it essentially does is it shows you why people don't value the information these companies are collecting today, why that would likely change, and then what would happen after it changes. And it's pretty compelling. So I'll try to check it out and get you guys more info. But anyways, links to everything we talked about today. And we also have the subreddit. We'd love to get your input at it. techtalktoday.reddit.com. 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 If there's something you didn't hear us cover in the show, well, you could always just go over there and submit it. Right? I mean, a lot of the guys in the mumble room are submitting stuff all the time too. You guys are like, you guys should get a gold star for the week. Some of you have been here every day this week. Pretty impressive.
What?
Pretty impressive.
Hey.
Tech
I
Talk
need
Today.
some structure in my life,
techtalktoday.reddit.com. Boom, go there, comment, vote, submit. We need all of that. We need all of it all the time. You can also email us today at jupiterbroadcasting.com, and you probably know this already, but we're live, and we do it at 9 a.m. noon Eastern. jblive.tv, Monday. I'm thinking about maybe going Tuesday through Friday, but right now it's Monday through Thursday. If I make a change, we'll let you know. And, of course, all schedule changes are always up over at jupiterbroadcasting.com/calendar. There's like, for example, the potential that some Thursdays I might not make it in the morning. Today was almost one of them because Unfilter keeps me up really late some nights, like it did last night. And then I get home, and I have some stuff I have to work on for the next day's shows. And then, like, when my daughter wakes me up a whole bunch in the middle of the night, some mornings I'm like, I'm not driving in. If that were ever to happen, I would try to get down to my computer before I went back to bed, go to jupiterbroadcasting.com/calendar and remove Tech Talk Today from the calendar. That way you would know. And if you had something fancy set up, like you added that to your Google Calendar, or you got an RSS feed, or you knew about Bang Next in the IRC chat room, well, then you would know that the show was canceled for that day. I try not to do that, but that's kind of like your sanity check. If you ever see a show doesn't pop up in your feed or whatever, that's one way you can see what the hell's going on. I try to tweet too, twitter.com/ChrisLAS. Okay, guys, so this is the end of our theme. I don't know if I might have another theme next week. To be honest with you, I really haven't thought that far ahead. But it is our Intel. Yeah, that's right. It's our Intel week, and I hope you guys don't mind this commercial. It is about Macs, and I know some of you. I think it gives you a rash. I'm not quite sure what happens, but you seem to have a reaction to it. But it was honestly one of my favorite Intel commercials of all time because it was a great commercial to mark a huge shift in the industry. But it was also voiced by Kiefer Sutherland, right? Right? That's pretty good, right? I mean, Jack Bauer. So here is our last Intel week, or Intel ad for this week. Thanks for joining me. Hope to see you back here on Monday. Goodbye, everybody.
The Intel chip. For years, it's been trapped inside PCs, inside dull little boxes, dutifully performing dull little tasks, when it could have been doing so much more. Starting today, the Intel chip will be set free and get to live life inside a Mac. Imagine the possibilities.